Stay tuned for today's episode of Breaking the Biz, an informative podcast where we dive into the world of entertainment by interviewing seasoned professionals who have made their mark in the industry. Gain invaluable insights as they share their personal journeys, offering advice on navigating the dynamic landscape of the entertainment industry. Whether you're an aspiring actor, musician, filmmaker, author, animator, or any creative soul, tune in for expert career guidance, insider tips, and first-hand accounts on breaking into the entertainment industry. Get ready to unlock the secrets behind successful careers and fuel your own passion for the limelight. Please remember to like this video and to subscribe to our channels for more great conversations.
Welcome to Breaking the Biz, presented by Yes I Can Unity through Music and Education. I'm your host, William Felber, here to guide you through the fascinating world of the entertainment industry as seen through the eyes of those who shape it. As we prepare to dive into a conversation moderated by co-host Brett Lieberman, we'll explore various perspectives from entertainment industry leaders, innovators, and visionaries. Join us for an episode filled with stories of adaptability, perseverance, and the relentless pursuit of cinematic excellence.
Welcome to Breaking the Biz podcast with the Yes I Can crew. We've got an amazing guest lined up tonight. We have Lawrence Gray, who is the founder and executive director at the Young Producers Group. Lawrence is a lifelong musician, a dedicated educator, and a tireless proponent of music education in schools. Lawrence, like I mentioned, is the founder of YPG and serves as the head of curriculum development by designing innovative, engaging curriculum that reflects the interests and lived experiences of students. With a bachelor's degree in music composition from New York University, a master's degree in education from the University of California, Los Angeles, go UCLA, and as an Ableton Certified Trainer, Lawrence's unique position singularly qualifies him to create curriculum and lead a team of forward-thinking educators. We were talking about entrepreneurs and disruptors last night, and it sounds like you are going to fit in that category. The days of just learning the same old music and, the stuff in high school, it's changing, and I can tell that you're on the forefront of that. So
yeah, man.
First, before we jump into it, I want to thank you for making time for us tonight and inspiring the next generation of creatives with disabilities. So my first question to you is, when did you fall in love with music?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Brett. It's great to be here with everybody. Again, my name is Lawrence Gray. I'm just stoked to be here and connect with everybody tonight. When did I fall in love with music? I don't know, man. I mean, I'd say that music has been a central part of my life for as long as I can remember. If I could probably pick one early memory moment, there's a group called The Prodigy that had a record in the 90s called Fat of the Land. This is a good recommendation here. I'll put this in the chat. I just typed Fart of the Land. It's Fat of the Land by The Prodigy. I remember listening to this music when I was a kid, and I was like 5 or 6 when that record came out, and I remember like karate dancing around my house as a kid, and just really, really digging that music. But I'd say really when it got into my bones was when I started playing guitar when I was like 10 or 11 years old. Fell in love with rock and roll. Someone put in the chat earlier, The Offspring. I was obsessed with those guys and learned how to play guitar and fell in love with Jimi Hendrix and classic rock and that stuff. And that really got it. I was totally obsessed playing guitar for several hours a day. And then I discovered Ableton Live, which is a digital audio workstation in high school. Some buddies were making music with that. And, I was in a little band and basically as soon as I realized, oh, wow, I can make all of this myself. And we don't need to be in a recording studio. We could be in our bedrooms doing this. that's when I really went off the deep end and became, a producer. And my buddies and I in high school were making music together all the time. And kind of what you were saying earlier, Brett, about music education kind of being not really enough, kind of out of sync. I wasn't able to do this stuff in my music class. My real authentic music making was happening on my own on the weekends with my friends, where we were learning together, teaching each other stuff. And it was really that, I think, social environment of being with my closest friends, making stuff, playing shows together, where it just, became, like as much a part of me as anything else. And I still love it completely. And think that the creative process is one of the best things that anybody can pursue.
I love how you mentioned finding Ableton and realizing you don't have to necessarily step into a recording studio. The days of having to, there's still something to be said about having an amazing producer and someone like yourself who knows the ins and outs of Ableton as technology moves along, or someone who knows Pro Tools. That's still needed. But the days of like not being able to do anything yourself are kind of long gone.
One thing on that, because I think that this is a really important thing to say for everybody here and any teachers or education folks that might be watching. Soundtrap, right? That is a program, a digital audio workstation that I will put in the chat here. Soundtrap is what it's called. It is a web-based digital audio workstation. So it's like Ableton or Pro Tools or FL Studio, but it's a website. So you can use it on Chromebooks. Chromebooks are everywhere in schools. iPads are all over the place. Soundtrap works on these devices. And I think the wide availability of Soundtrap, how user-friendly it is, and the rise of Chromebooks and iPads, these to me, from somebody who's been, as you said, a tireless proponent of music education in schools, the fact that we now have these programs widely available that anybody can use to make professional sounding music is a huge, huge thing. So, I grew up in West LA. I basically had access to technology, coming from a pretty privileged situation. It was me and my buddies. We were able to get these things, but I think no longer is it necessary to have, every kid basically has access to computers and software now in a way that I think is, from an access to music standpoint, truly revolutionary, and something that I think is a very, very powerful tool, something that we're determined in Young Producers Group to help teachers and students really make the most of.
Yeah, and I think also the days of having to, have a guest on your song and having them have to come into the studio and be in the same room. Obviously, now you can share files, share music.
I mean, our phones all have really good microphones inside of them, right? And I think if you go walk into a closet or put a blanket over your head and, you can create somewhat of an acoustically treated environment, literally doing what I'm doing right here is enough to have a very, very high quality podcast recording or verse on a track or whatever. So the tools are available and accessible to anybody. And it's a really important sea change that I think, is really only within the last couple of years, really since COVID.
Okay. Let's talk. So after high school, you're playing in bands, you're gigging. What do you study in college?
Yeah, so I went to NYU and studied music composition there. So that's writing music. And I was the only person in my program that was using one of these, right, a computer, as my main instrument. I focused on Ableton Live as my main tool for composing. I was the only producer in the composition department. So I still felt out of sync with my music classes. I think in general, it's, kind of a funny thing for a person who runs a music education company to say. I think oftentimes music education just gets it wrong. And it's about what the teacher thinks is cool and what the teacher thinks is important. For me, in the curricula that we make and the pedagogy that we give to teachers, basically the professional development and the way that we coach teachers, is it's not about you at all. It's about the students in the classroom and what they think is cool, and having the creative process and creativity be about a level playing field where all tastes are valid. Hip hop is just as important, just as valuable as classical music. EDM is just as beautiful, just as important as a thing to study as jazz or anything else. And I think, NYU, arguably one of the best music schools in the world, was still very conservative, very backwards looking instead of forward looking. So, yeah.
When you're at NYU, and you realizing you're using the computer as your main instrument, you kind of still feel like an outsider, but again, disruptor pioneer. When do you go, am I going to be a DJ with the skill sets that I'm learning? Where do you turn and go, I want to be able to teach what I'm learning here to others and make that impact?
For sure. So I was pretty disenchanted with the music industry at that time. The music industry is not so nice. Every industry has its issues, for sure. But I did an internship when I was at NYU working at what's called like a sound house that makes music for commercials, TV, movies, whatever. And that just was not appealing. That looked really, at least where I was at that point in my life, not something that I was interested in pursuing. And how many beardy white boys from Santa Monica are trying to be DJs? Like, so many. And I was really not so interested in being the 1,000,001th dude trying to be, that guy. So, at the same time, a buddy of mine who was studying social work was working at a restorative justice facility in Brooklyn. So these were kids that had all been arrested. Many of them had served time in juvenile detention facilities. These kids, this was a after-school court-mandated program in Brooklyn. These kids were all from East Brooklyn, many from a part of the city called Brownsville, which is a pretty tough part of the city. As I mentioned, I am from West LA. So, Santa Monica and Brownsville could not be more different. But in the little studio that they had in the back there, we were able to immediately connect, and we were able to be immediately on the same page. And even though I walked in there and I'm like, all right, guys, I'm going to teach you how to make hip hop, they look at me and they're like, bro, no, you're not. But as soon as I got Ableton open, get the 808s going, set up the microphone, they're like, oh, all right, cool. And then again, people from two totally different worlds were immediately on the same page. And that for me was really like an aha moment of being like, no matter where you're coming from, no matter what your background is, if you love making music, the studio is a way to be connected instantaneously. And the stuff that they were putting in their lyrics, the stuff that they were talking about, I know they weren't talking about in their anger management and their therapy, program classes. If you want to hear some of the music that we made there, I'll put the link in the chat. It is the best of CCA .bandcamp.com. And there's one kid in particular named Ash B, who just absolutely blew my mind. And that was really for me the moment where I was like, ooh, okay, I want to start something that allows for this to happen. This was back in 2010. And, I mentioned that I did not like my jazz band in high school. I did not really like my music program at NYU. I realized there's nothing. There's no music production in K-12. There's nothing that actually reflects what modern music is. And I saw an opportunity to create something that didn't exist yet. I saw a gap. And I bit off way more than I could chew and said, hey, I'm going to start something that could do this. So I applied to UCLA to get a master's in education. I was 22 at the time. I knew if I was going to start a company that was going to do this, I would need to have, some letters next to my name. I would need to have a master's in order for people to take me seriously. Got the degree in 2013, started developing the company immediately and properly incorporated in 2016. And here we are. I think maybe some interesting kind of career advice that I can give here is I think there's real pros and cons to being your own boss and to, in my position, I've never worked for anybody, right? This is the only job I've ever had. And it's definitely cool, right, to not have a boss, but not having a boss ever, I've made a lot of mistakes that I would love to have learned from observing someone else make those mistakes, right? I've stepped on every single rake along the path and, right, like I've taken every hit and that's definitely made me stronger. It's definitely made me a more informed business person. But there is value to working in someone else's company first. I don't know if it was, just kind of a foolish 22-year-old, I can do it, right? I see the problem, I'm going to fix it. Maybe a little bit of that. But, it was definitely, there's pros and cons. But yeah, this is the only job I've ever had. And I plan on keeping it that way.
It's kind of phenomenal. I've never heard somebody say this is my only job. I've never had, not even Starbucks, not a waiter job.
I worked at Starbucks
All right.
actually when I was in high school over the summer, and I was a camp counselor over the summer as well. And that was really kind of the first experience that I had as a young person working with kids. I also have a sibling that's 10 years younger than me. And the camp counselor stuff and being an older brother, I think really did kind of condition me to being a kid person. But yeah, in terms of like actual adult jobs, this is it.
It's phenomenal. All right. So I got to pick some of it apart because what you're saying is great stuff. First of all, to find a niche, that's one of the things we talk about with entrepreneurs. They solve problems.
Yep.
They mitigate taking major risks. And you found that little niche of the fact of in school, K through 12, they definitely are not hitting on this component of recording. It's, when I think of band in high school, it's the drum line, the horns and, reading music and performing the jazz, which has led many people to amazing things. But I understand but I understand where you're saying production is such a vital component. And if people could learn that very on, who knows where they advance in college and where, maybe they're successful making that music in high school.
Let me say something about that, because I think this is a really important thing to understand about Young Producers Group and really like music education, period. If you look at the two alumni of Young Producers Group that have gone on to win Grammys, one of them is named Jasper Harris, and the other one is named Sora Lopez. They are both classically trained musicians. Jasper, who is producing for Doja Cat, Post Malone, Jack Harlow, he's working on the new Camila Cabello record. He's one of the most in-demand producers in the world. He is a classically trained percussionist who, was playing in orchestras growing up. I taught him how to use Ableton, but he is, a killer piano player. He is an instrumentalist first. And Sora, that dude is an incredible cellist and is a classically trained musician there. So I have never once said, hey, let's get rid of band, orchestra, choir. I think that band, orchestra, choir skills only make you a better producer. But I would also argue that being informed with technology, being comfortable recording, being able to speak music tech is actually going to make you a better instrumentalist and certainly have more professional opportunities in that space. Um, you know, I have to watch my tongue a little bit when I say these kind of things, but I'm going to be frank with you guys. I do think for real, music education as it stands in 2024 trains people to be music teachers. It doesn't train people to be musicians. Band, orchestra, choir, oftentimes you have the band director who, was kind of the top member of their band, then trains, you have your kind of top down repertoire thing. You have your first and second chairs. There's going to be one or two kids that really excel in band who are like, I want to grow up to be a band director. And then it kind of just creates this circle of band directors teaching future band directors who teach future band directors. And it's not really looking at the fact that, oh my God, Coachella has hundreds of thousands of people that are spending literally hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of 2 weekends, generating an entire industry that has nothing to do with band, orchestra, choir, right? And if you look at, you have all those people on stage, but you have all the people running live sound, and you have all the people running lights, and you have all the people coordinating at the festival, and you have tour managers, and you have artist managers, and you have people that are managing all the publishing and the licensing and the copyright, and the people handling contracts around that. It's just like band, orchestra, choir is important, but in 2024, it's not the whole story. And I think it's time that we start training people for actual careers in the music industry, not just to be one of a couple hundred people playing in philharmonics.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think we're definitely on the same page, and I think having the piano skills and all that is just as important as being able to lead the session, record the session, add the melody here and there, jump on a bass, to be able to do it all. But to lead, the recording and being a young producer is extremely important. And I think sometimes we don't understand the producer role, and that
Certainly.
can encompass everything that you are talking about. But obviously, you cannot ignore the technology. It's advancing every single day. There's new programs, new platforms, Ableton. We have some students on here who are Ableton trained as well.
Nice.
So I agree with you. So I love the fact that you are a disruptor. And when I say a disruptor, I mean that in the most positive way possible. I think anyone who makes change has to be a disruptor and change the game and change the direction. So
I definitely identify with that, right? I think I feel like I am up against a couple hundred years of tradition in band, orchestra, choir, and for me, just to kind of hone in on this disruption, it's not even so much about music tech versus acoustic instruments or choir. That's not the distinction. For me, what it's really about is centering creativity in the class. And digital audio workstations are the best way to enable immediate feedback for students in culturally relevant ways as they're writing. Yes, we could have students sitting with pencil and pens or whatever, writing on staff paper, plucking it out at a keyboard, and for them to be able to hear an entire piece in their head. Sure, that's the goal. That's great. I don't think I wouldn't be able to do that. And I have a degree in music composition from NYU. I think the focus for us and the real disruption again is moving away from repertoire, from playing other people's music, and centering students and what they want to play. All the tech is in service of that. Okay. I think I interrupted you.
No, you're good. You're good. It's fine. A disruptor in a different way. All good. Let me ask you. So you said you made a lot of mistakes, and I think it's important to highlight it's okay to make mistakes. You're still your only job, adult job, right?
That's right.
You have to make mistakes in order to learn one of the things that we talk about and why we're bringing you in here is the fact that when you find a mentor who can help walk you through, and maybe someone who's done some of the work that you're trying to do. I mean, you mentioned biting off more than you can chew, but at the same time, you had a vision and you've stuck to it.
Yep.
Is there a mentor that comes to mind? Maybe an educator. You mentioned NYU didn't really get it. Then you go
Yeah.
to UCLA. Was there someone who goes, Lawrence, you're on to something, like, but these are the steps you need to take in order to not make as many mistakes? I mean, obviously, you've got the whole company going, you've got successful people underneath you. But was there a mentor, or did you just figure it all out yourself?
And, you know, I really can't point to one mentor. I wish I could. That would be really nice. If there's one mentor though, someone who I really think of as sort of like a role model, someone that I've spoken to and who I really identify with, it's Gerhard Bayless, the CEO of Ableton. That dude is just, he also has had one job, and that's the CEO of Ableton. He's someone I interviewed him a while ago for the YPG podcast, and I just really, he's someone who I've had some contact with and really appreciate. But no, I don't really have like one mentor. What I will say, and I think everybody here can learn from this, when I was just getting going with all this, when I had just graduated from UCLA, it was still me doing business as DBA, Young Producers Group. I reached out to every single person I knew that had anything to do with music, anything to do with education, anything to do with starting a company. I must have reached out to 200, 300 people over the course of a year, 2 years. And what I really found to be true is people love to talk about themselves. I mean, here I am on this Zoom. I think people are down to talk. If you go to them, if you make it very easy for them and say, hey, I'd love to learn about how you did ABC. Can you talk to me about what you're doing? Most people will be able to give you 20 or 30 minutes at some point over the next month. I think Zoom, FaceTime makes it even easier. You guys have a great advocate with Brett here. If you are interested in starting your own thing, you cannot do it on your own. It is so helpful to talk to people, and people will say, "Oh, you should talk to da 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 da." It also makes it real. Instead of this just being something that you're thinking about on your own, making your business plan or putting things on a whiteboard. If you write an email and say, "Hey, I'm gonna start a company. I'm thinking about doing da 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 da. Will you talk to me about blah 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 blah?" That puts you out there and takes you out of your little shell and makes it where you are now that person who's starting that company doing that thing. I think you talked about willingness to make mistakes. You also have to be very willing to be uncool, to be ignorant, to be low on the totem pole, to be low status. You know what I'm saying? To where you are, asking people for help. And I think that's a real challenge for a lot of people. For good reason. It doesn't necessarily feel great to say, "Hey, can we get some coffee?" Someone says, "Yeah, cool." And then they don't get back to you. And you say, "Hey, just following up. I really would love to da-da-da," right? Like, that's not great. No one wants that. But that's what it takes. And I think both on the setting up a network and willingness to make mistakes, I think one of my real superpowers as an entrepreneur is I am persistent. If I want something and I see a path to get there, I'm going to be annoying to make it happen. I'm not going to be too annoying, right? Because if you're too persistent and you go too far, up if you make too much noise, you can scare it away. But I don't really let things go. And if I think something is important, I will make a mistake. I will make another mistake until I get there. So I think persistence and willingness to do things over and over again, that's invaluable. And I think this is true no matter what. I think people give up too quickly in general. If you really believe in something and you're willing to work for it and be persistent, you really can make incredible things happen. So, really, I've been my own mentor. I've taught myself a lot. And look, again, I want to be perfectly frank with everyone. Like, as I mentioned, I'm from like Brentwood, right? West LA, one of the epicenters of privilege in the world. My dad is a lawyer, and I've been able to talk with him about issues, right? As I'm negotiating contracts, I've had him to be able to help me work through this stuff, and looking down the barrel of insurance companies and, hiring and firing, all these things that are not fun. I've had a senior person who has dealt in this world for a long time. So I think that's like a huge thing that is important to highlight, is that I've had help. And that's no small thing.
And I want to point out, you said persistency, which I give the equivalence to being resilient. And you mentioned people give up on their dreams real quickly. One quick denial, and you just kind of go, "Oh, it wasn't meant to be." And you think about some of these people, I'm thinking of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, trying to put out a book and being denied by 20 some odd publishers, saying like, this is a stupid idea. And then finally someone bites and goes, oh yeah, like a wizard guy and with a lightning bolt on his forehead. Yeah, let's put it out. Right. So resiliency is important. The other thing that I want to point out is your network is your net worth. We've heard that before. And you didn't just jump into it. You did take the time to interview everybody that you knew in a capacity on how they could help. I totally agree. People love talking, but one of the other components, you did find a niche, and there's lots of people who will tell you like, oh, that's a dumb idea. Like, high school is just for the jazz band, like, what are you trying to do? And if you really have a vision, you need to sometimes be able to balance are these people right? And is my idea maybe not going to work? And then you have to balance it with, this is my vision and I want to see it all the way through, because I believe that passionately that this is an area that needs to be focused upon.
I mean, absolutely. I've from the very start, I know that I've been existing in a somewhat of a tension where, the music education companies that did exist in my world, there was either very, very expensive programs that were made for rich kids, and then there were nonprofits that were clearly trying to spread every dollar that they raised as thin as possible so that they could get numbers to raise money. And the reason why I bring this up is I spoke with a girl's dad that I was giving private lessons to. He's a billionaire. And I basically was talking with him about Young Producers Group and my vision for this. And he said to me, you're either going to have to make this one or the other. This is a billionaire. I'm sitting in his mansion and he's telling me this. And I was just like, in my mind, I'm like, no, you're wrong. Like, I'm not going to do that. Right. And I think this is something where my untraditional background allows me to approach these concepts a little bit differently. Right. I fundamentally believe that the more money that we make, the more profitable we are as a company, the more social impact we can have. The more social impact we can have, the more money we can make as a company. This is fundamentally un-American, right? This is not like a traditional capitalist structure. This is what we call a B Corp, right? This is something where a social enterprise, right? Young Producers Group is not a nonprofit, right? We are a for-profit company. That being said, I'm not just focused on how can we make as much money as possible. Access and equity are essential to what we do. So I looked in the face of a billionaire and was just like, bro, you don't get it, you know? And most people would be like, oh, okay, this person who knows everything is saying this to me, I'm going to do that. And I just felt in my bones that he didn't get it. So, you know, I stuck to my guns. And, you know, I think what's interesting here is like, there is a world that he is right. You know, if I chose one of those paths, it might, you know, it would have been easier for sure. I'm still wrestling with that tension, but I think that's part of what makes my company so interesting and what makes people connect with it. And I think if you look at the success that we are having, I think a lot of it does relate to the fact that this isn't just for the wealthiest kids who can already afford everything. You know, this is about, back to again the restorative justice facility. This is about putting everybody under the same umbrella, right? Kids in Santa Monica want to be rappers, and kids in South LA, you know, like K-pop and metal and all the things that you wouldn't normally expect. Everything's nuanced, and we seek to really enable that textured conversation. And you know, it's not easy, but if you believe in something, if it's in your vision, and I want to be clear again, like, we've never lost money. YPG has always been profitable from the day that I started it. It's clear that it was working. I'm not just like banging my head against the wall of something that's not working, right? It is working. So, you know, I think that's an important thing to highlight, but it's like, there's going to be people who are telling you no. There's going to be people who give you bad advice. But there's no right answers, right? It's all, you know, there's no way that I could have known when I started developing online curricula in 2018 that, you know, distance learning and online learning would have been everything the next school year. I rolled out online learning with YPG in fall of 2019, right? That's when we released our first online curricula. You know, March 2020 was that year. We had all these curricula ready to go. And even more than that, I now knew how to make online curricula. And now we are the leaders in the country in digital curricula for K-12 schools in music tech. There's no way I could have known that. That's, you know, timing hasn't always smiled on me. There it did. You know, so yeah.
It's a great example of not having to pivot and be so adaptable when you're ahead of the wave, so to speak.
Truly, I mean, you know, we were kind of lamenting before how there's a real, people see music tech as this grand other in music education. All those band directors became music tech teachers overnight and needed our help. You know, today, a lot of those people are like, cool, I'm never going to touch a computer again. And that's fine. But there are a lot of people who are like, oh man, Soundtrap, Ableton Live, you know, digital audio workstations, creativity in the classroom is fostering engagement in a way I've never seen. And yeah, it moved the industry in our direction 10 years, right? In like 2 years.
I have to tell you, I have to give you major kudos on the entrepreneurial mindset. You're the first entrepreneur that we've talked to that did not lose money in the beginning. You always hear of people who lose money, figure it out. Sometimes they step away, start something new. It's very unheard of to take that leap of faith, be outside the box, and from day one make money.
Yeah, man, thank you.
And make an impact right away.
I appreciate that. I think again, it's like I knew that it was going to work, right? There were already people asking me for lessons. It was clear that there was a huge gap. I think the difficult part is turning it into a $5 million company, a $20 million company, and that's the hard part, right? But no, I appreciate that, man, and I think if you can smell that there is an opportunity there and people are asking for it, you don't. This is, I think, another thing that people forget. And I think, you have sort of like Shark Tank syndrome of like, you want something to be huge immediately. And like, you got to get investors and right. It doesn't have to be like this race, you can start slow. And if you're able to prove something out, develop IP around something, like if you develop your intellectual property around something and you really develop a brand and get it going, like you don't have to make $1 million in your first year, right? Things can be slow going, and that's not a bad thing, right? Like it, yeah. I think there is a thing with entrepreneurs of like, you want to be this unicorn that makes a ton of money immediately. It doesn't have to be like that. You can make enough money to be good yourself, and maybe you're able to support your family, blah blah blah, and you can kind of grow from there. And then if the idea actually works and you're able to really step into opportunities, then you can really begin to see actual success.
Okay. So talk me real quickly, because time wise, I want to make sure I get time for the students in here to get you some questions. You have a huge team. You have other,
Not really.
well, you still have a team. It's not just you anymore.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Talk me through some of your team and who you got and how you got them. Is this like, let me reach out to some of my people who went to school with me? Is this talking to people who spawn ideas and you go, join my mission?
So this is the hardest part. The human side is really difficult. And when we're talking about K-12 public schools, those are difficult environments for most people to work in. You have to be a little bit crazy like me to be able to thrive in an environment like that. Classrooms are tough, period. And I think when a school might be struggling with like a challenging school culture, a music producer walking into the door, that can be very hard. So in the early years, I was hiring a lot of producers and basically training them to be successful in schools. And, we talk about a rake that I stepped on. That was a pretty big one. I learned pretty early on that it's much better to hire teachers, people that are comfortable in the classroom, and train them on music tech than the other way around. So, initially I was just hiring people to come on as instructors in the classes. And, every single year someone would quit on me in the middle of the school year. And that honestly was a really big reason why I started developing online curricula, is like, okay, the human element is so difficult. I was able to basically clone myself in virtual form through videos. But my general manager now is someone that I initially brought on as a teacher. And he was doing such a good job that I, basically put him on salary, and he's now, basically running all the administrative stuff for YPG that I used to do. And it's opening me up to do, I'm up now in Santa Cruz visiting one of our school districts that has licensed our curricula for their full district. And it allows me to go up here and do this kind of business development and professional development and support for our schools. Another teacher that has been with me for a while, I found him from going to CalArts and doing a presentation at their music technology forum. He came up to me after and was like, I love what you're doing. I'd love to be a part of this. And he's, a great teacher. And I have him now as an administrative assistant to where he's helping our GM and handling some of the more technical stuff. So finding people, training those people, supporting those people is really tough. And where I think I've grown the most, or one of the most as an entrepreneur and as a person who runs a company, is setting up infrastructure within the company so that people are supported, people have what they need, and really developing a company culture that people can connect to and really grow with. So that's hard, right? That is, there's really no good way to be taught that. And this is something that I've had to learn a lot over the years. So the human side is I feel good about where we are now, but it's literally taken like 10 years, 8 years of refinement to get here. And this is where, had I worked for another company, then I could see, okay, this is how they do it. They use Slack, they use that would have been really helpful. And I think this is where, I've had to figure things out the hard way a lot.
But you have realized, we talk about collaboration and you find people who fill in the holes and do things that maybe you don't do so well. And that's a very important component of finding the right team. Who knows if you went down a different path and you worked for a different company, if you would have found the time to create your own vision. Like, you mentioned the billionaire had his 2 cents, and sometimes there's 2 roads traveled. You never know where it leads.
Gerhard Bayless, the CEO of Ableton that I mentioned before, he told me that the thing that has made the most impact for him in Ableton is finding the right people at the right times. Collaboration isn't important. It's everything. It's the only thing. Your ability to create a team that executes a vision is it. That's the only thing that you can do. And this is true in a recording session. This is true on a film set. This is true in a, corporate meeting about selling paper. Your ability to work within a group or structure that group and work towards a common goal, that's what being a professional is. Unless you are, some incredibly isolated case of someone doing something entirely on their own, which is basically nothing, right? You can round that down to 0. 99.99999% of people work within a team. Those soft skills are the most important things that you can be developing as a young professional trying to get into creative industries.
I hope you guys are hearing what Lawrence is saying. Like, that is why we focus on the skills that we teach within the program. You'll use them for life. And who knows if you use it to create your own platform, like you're hearing right here. Got one last question, then I'm going to turn it over to questions. What, you mentioned learning curve, stepping on the rake. What is the biggest piece of advice you would give to your younger self with what you've experienced in launching this company and being successful?
I think really the biggest thing is focusing on the structure of the company, creating a culture, creating guidelines, putting everything down on paper so that other people can see it too. I think so often as creatives, as entrepreneurs, we see it. We know what we want it to be. We have the vision, but people aren't just gonna get it. You have to set up structures so that people can easily plug into it and engage. And I think focusing on how you can convey your vision to others and create a culture so that people can connect to it within that structure. That's really the thing that I think took me the longest to develop. And I think another thing is like try to be less emotional. I think there's no point in getting upset, freaked out. Trying to keep more of a stoic, less reactive approach to business is going to serve you better. I naturally am like a pretty like high energy person, and it's difficult for me to keep it cool. And I think that there have definitely been times where I've stressed myself out unnecessarily. So I think the more you can try to keep a level head, less reactive, and create a culture within your company that people can connect to and grow with. I'd say those would be two good things for little Lawrence to know. But yeah, I've got 5 minutes left. I'd love to.
Let's do it. Let's do some questions.
Have I ever worked with film composers? Not directly, but I do know a few of them. There's a friend of mine from high school, a guy named Zach Robinson, that wrote music for Cobra Kai. And he also wrote music. He was at the Oscars. Forget what it was, but yeah, my buddy Zach Robinson has been writing music for film. And one of my former students is this girl named Tatiana Rochot, has gone on to study that in college and is absolutely killing it in that world.
But just to piggyback off what Lawrence is saying, Ableton is that conduit that can be used in all different aspects. We've got Christian, we've got Dylan on here, both students of 1500 Sound Academy that are learning nice. Ableton. Christian's a graduate and Ableton certified, I'd imagine, on his end. But yes, that leads you to be able to work on all those different projects and speak a universal language and a universal tech that everyone can understand.
I mean, not only is Ableton used for making music, it's also, any DAW is also used for editing the dialogue in a movie, for mixing all the sounds in that movie, right? It's not just the music, it's every piece of audio connected to that movie. So it's connected at all levels. And then, the same skills translate to actually in the theaters or on your headphones, in the actual like consumption of that media. Audio technology is still at play. So, Daniel, you got a question? Talk to me.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if this is the question Brett already told you, but what is one thing you're looking forward to in the coming future?
I love this. We are working now on our level 3 curriculum, right? We have music production 1 and 2. We are about to start shooting our level 3 advanced music tech and business curriculum. So this one takes all the skills that kids have learned so far about production and puts it in the context of the larger industry. So I'll be interviewing Jasper. I'll be interviewing a friend of his that he introduced me to named Drew Sliger, who's Lil Nas X's vocal engineer. He's worked with Young Thug and a ton of other people. I'll be talking to people about copyright, license production, or licensing and sort of publishing. That's the word I was looking for. About all this sort of industry stuff that folks need to know as they head into the professional world. So I'm real pumped about that. That will be coming out in fall of 2024. So yeah, that's probably top of my list right now professionally.
Awesome. Love it. Any other questions? Speak now, forever hold your question. All right. I want to again give you kudos. I think you, like I mentioned, you found a niche. I also love the fact that you took advice, but you looked and you said, your way of going like this with the charity, helping individuals leads to making more money. That good karma is absolutely true. And how cool is it to think you're impacting an individual so young and being that catalyst to change somebody's direction. I loved how you mentioned with Ableton, it does lead to so many different other opportunities other than just making music, producing music. You're talking about sound design, you're talking about movies and editing and live sound and
Yep, yep,
you
yep.
know even to lighting. All of those are different areas and different jobs and different opportunities. I just think what you're doing is amazing and cool. If there's any way we can help connect the dots, get you into some districts, and I'll be reaching out. I'll be reaching out to you offline. But I love what you're doing. Keep it up. Um,
Thank you.
to health, to happiness, and to grinding every day. Keep it up. On that note, everyone, thank you for tuning in, and I will catch everybody on the flip side. Thank you again, Lawrence. Have a wonderful evening.
Take care, guys. This was so much fun.
As we wrap up today's episode, we hope you've been inspired by the conversation you just heard. Before we sign off, it's crucial to acknowledge the role of Yes I Can in making Breaking the Biz a reality. Yes I Can, a transformative program dedicated to empowering young individuals with disabilities through education, advocacy, and mentorship, stands as a beacon of innovation and progress. This podcast is a testament to the program's commitment to fostering talent and providing platforms for meaningful conversations. Through Breaking the Biz, Yes I Can continues its mission of empowering voices, breaking barriers, and shaping a more inclusive and accessible world. Remember, each episode is not just a story shared. It's a step forward in the collective journey of growth, learning, and empowerment championed by Yes I Can. Thank you for joining us on Breaking the Biz. Until we meet again, keep turning dreams into reality and spreading positivity through every action. I'm your host, William Felber. See you next time.